corner.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock. Time for us to get started. Welcome to this forum. This is an activity of the Government Affairs Committee of the Huron Chamber of Commerce. Mike Held is the chairman, and ordinarily he would be here serving as your moderator, but he had all of a sudden a conflict. So I'm Tom Hansen. I'm the vice chair of the committee, and so I will be your moderator for this morning. We are here to welcome and hear from the two candidates that are running for the Senate at the South Dakota Legislature. And they have drawn for position to see who gets to speak first. And as we proceed, just some of the rules that each speaker is given 3 minutes to make an opening comment, and then at the end we'll have 2 minutes each for closing comments. And so after the opening comments, then we will open it up for giving you, the audience, an opportunity to make questions, and we'll proceed through the course of the morning. So with that, let us begin. The speakers have drawn, and David Wheeler has come up to be the first presenter. So the floor is yours, Senator.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you all for being out here on a Saturday morning to talk about some politics in our district and the issues that we face. Many of you know me, but for those who don't, again, my name is David Wheeler. I was born and raised here in Huron. I'm the 5th generation of my family to reside here in Huron. I live here with my wife, Kristen, and our 3 children. I got one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school, so we are running around a lot. I'm an attorney in private practice here. I've been practicing for the last 18 years here in Huron with the law firm of Blue Wheeler and Banks. I'm active in my church, Grace Episcopal Church, where I serve as a worship leader. I currently serve as a liaison to the Huron Community Campus Board. And prior to my service as a senator, I served on the Huron School Board for almost 9 years. It's been my privilege to serve you as your state senator for the last almost 4 years now. During that time, I've been able to serve you in leadership in the Senate Republican Caucus. I'm currently a majority whip. I serve as a committee chair for the Senate Commerce and Energy Committee. I also serve on the Judiciary Committee, the Legislative Procedures Committee, the State Affairs Committee, and the Government Operations and Audit Committee. I see that my job out in PA is to represent the district as a whole and to serve the citizens of my community. I believe I've had a lot of good accomplishments while I've been out there for the last 4 years, and I hope that you will send me back based upon that record accomplishments that I do have. I was just going back and adding it up. I have been the Senate prime sponsor on 39 bills in the past 4 years, and 32 of them were signed into law. That's a pretty good track record, I believe, for someone who has that high of a bill load that I've been willing to carry. Some highlights of those bills that I've been working on. Probably the biggest ones are the 3 special appropriations that we passed in the last 4 years for the state fair. To get the decks built, we had to supply some additional funding for the decks, and then to get the shed. Those bills solidified support for the state fair. It takes a 2/3 vote to get those done. That's a high level of support then in the legislature for the fair. That's a great testament to our fair leadership, the folks who work here at the fair who do a great job running that institution in Huron. Another big accomplishment that I think that I've had is the bill for $5 million for CTE education, or Career Tech Ed, VOTech Ed. was able to get a special appropriation to encourage school districts across the state to come together to provide additional space and equipment for VOTEC. This is an area that we need to expand more in to encourage more vocational time or education for our students. I've also written the post-election audit bill to encourage our election procedures to be even better than they already are. I see my time is up, and so I will wait for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Now, Mrs. Schmidt, it's your turn.
Okay. My name is Jim Schmidt, and I'm running, of course, for District 22 for the Senate. And the reason I'm running is because I've had numerous people giving me a call, from both parties, mind you, saying, Pierre's not listening to us. They're kind of, they get to Pierre, they tend to do their own thing, and they need somebody that's there for them. And that's the person I want to be. I grew up on a farm. I know what it's like to work the farm. The land is a part of us. You can't separate us from our land. And so I'm fighting for them. But there are 3 reasons why I am running. Number 1, God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. If I get to Pierre, I will use my 2 ears and listen to you. I don't care what party you belong. If you have needs, you get a hold of me, and I'd be more than happy to listen to your concerns. Number 2, I would take those concerns, needs, ideas to Pierre with me and mull them over with people that are willing to listen and see if we can do something about these different issues. And number 3, because I have a heart for the people, and I have a heart for farmers, I have a heart for landowners, I have a heart for communities. I grew up around by Washington Springs, and I see their needs. I feel for them, and I will fight for them. And I'm a Vietnam veteran. After I graduated from Washington Springs, I spent 2 tours over in Vietnam on the gun line, and I've had responsibilities that that are very important. Other people's lives depended on what I did. And like one time I was a helmsman, an experienced helmsman on a ship, and I had to go through the Bering Sea. And in the Bering Sea, if you didn't do things right, you could run the rudder into the stops, turn the ship sideways, and kill everybody aboard. The Bering Sea, you only live for, I don't know, 15 minutes at the most, and you're gone. It was my responsibility for them to be able to keep the ship safe and right. I am not afraid to take on things like this because I know what's at stake. So consider me when you want somebody that's going to listen, somebody that can take your ideas to peer, and somebody that'll stand for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Before we get into the public questions, I'd like to take a minute to recognize the media presence. We have Kurt Nettinger from the Plainsman. There's presence on the radio, and also this can be picked up on YouTube, here on YouTube channel. Also, there's refreshments, and I think there's still probably some coffee in the pots back there. This is sponsored by the Farmers Union, AARP, and the Huron Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Now I would invite you to come forward, anyone who has a question that you would like to have addressed. The only requirement is that you step forward to the podium, identify yourself as to who you are, and proceed. So who has the first question?
Kevin
Welcome.
Mandy from Huron. With Amendment G, be on the ballot this year. It's gonna become a item in the legislature, I'm sure. So the basic question is, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to? Go ahead, David.
Hey, that's an easy one. I'm pro-life. I have a 100% pro-life rating from South Dakota Right to Life. I have made sure that we have worked to protect life in South Dakota, and we will continue to do so in Pierre. Just briefly on Amendment G, it's a bad idea. It's not good to put that language into our state constitution. We spent 50 years with rules and regulations on abortion being decided by the Supreme Court justices in in Washington D.C. We don't want that to now start happening with our Supreme Court justices in Pierre instead, because that's what will happen if it passes. It will politicize our judiciary, and it's just not a good way of regulating abortion. It's not written well, and it's going to lead to consequences I don't think South Dakotans support. So I would ask you to oppose Amendment G and work with the legislature, work with the legislators, work through the referral process or other ways to help to get citizens involved in this question without sticking it in the Constitution where I think it'll be bad for South Dakota.
Thank you, David. Jim, would you like to respond?
Yes, I am not an extremist. An extremist goes all the way and does not take into consideration things like if the mother should die, she has the right to be able to be with her and her doctor, and government should not interfere. And rape and incest are things that should be up to doctors, counselors, immediate family, and again, I don't feel government should interfere. But I also believe in adoption. There is another option that's not talked about enough. There are mothers out there or wish to be mothers, bare arms wishing they could have a child. I don't believe there's a such thing as an unwanted child. I believe there's a situation like that, they should consider adoption and consider, there's a lot of help out there to be able to help mothers to care for babies and to help people streamline adoption. And I agree with Mr. Wheeler on this bill. I looked at the last part of it, and it says, determined by the pregnant by the pregnant woman's physician according to the physical his own judgment. And to leave that to a doctor to decide and stuff like that, it's too radical. I agree. I couldn't support this bill the way it's written. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions?
Hi, I'm Dwayne Loftman. I live in here, and I'll be honest, Jim's my personal friend, so. But I just wondered, it's kind of a vague question, but can you tell us which role you've had in your life that you most feel you gained experience and you feel best about yourself as having done, anything from Boy Scout leader to school board person to working working with the county and that type of thing. But I'll just leave it up to you to kind of figure if is that specific enough? Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. My background, over the years, right now I am president of the photo club, conduct meetings there. I've also been the president of the South Dakota Custodial Association. I've been an elder in the church, and we've had to make some tough decisions in the past, some real tough ones. And so I'm not unfamiliar with being on committees and these kinds of things. I have been a scout leader for 10 years. I took a group of Cub Scouts and went directly into 222 with the whole group, and some of them became Eagle Scouts. So I have a lot of experience of working with people. Yes, I may not have a lot of experience as a senator. A first-time candidate never does. There's no special school for that. And we learn. But there's two kinds of people that can be a senator. One can go look for people and follow them and vote the same way they do every time. Or they could turn around and somebody could hand them a thing, this is how you vote for today. That's a possibility, but not me. I believe in research. I want to find out from both sides what the opinion from both sides, and I want to talk to the people, and then before I make a decision, I'll pray about it, and the last thing I do before I say yes or no is I ask the question, is this good for the people I represent or not? Then I make a decision. Thank you.
David?
Thank you. I, too, have had a lot of opportunities and roles throughout my life. I also have been a scout leader, den leader for my sons, who are, one was now also in Troop 222, and working on his way up to Eagle, we hope. I have, as was mentioned, served on the Huron School Board. I was president of that board. I would say that board gave me the most experience in terms of government functioning, how to deal with a board, how to deal with multiple people who all have an equal vote, how to get stuff accomplished, how to get it passed, prior to becoming a senator. But I think that the biggest role that I have that really shapes how I deal with things is my role as a father, as a parent, and learning from my children every day how to deal with ups and downs, highs and lows, how to deal with the things they care about, and the things that they remind me of when I am out there in Pierre and I'm dealing with weighty subjects, and I think about, how does this affect my children? And those are thoughts that go through my head a lot out there, to know that I'm doing, I think, the right thing to lead me out there. And I would just finish up by saying, I don't think anybody who's followed my time out in Pierre would say I'm a follower out there, that I do what someone tells me or someone gives me a way how to vote. I would say the person that I have argued with the most on the Senate floor is the Senate President Pro Tem Lee Schoenbeck. The number of times that he and I have gone toe-to-toe on different bills, you'd be surprised. And so I think that I provide an independent voice that does what I believe is the right thing after doing the research on the bill.
Thank you. And a question?
Hi, Tim Van Berken from Huron. My question's on initiated measure 28, the consumption tax removal. What do you see as the Senate's role in addressing the revenue shortfall should this bad piece of legislation pass? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I can start with that one. Yes, that will cause a lot of difficulty. The fiscal note that's in IM 28 estimated reduction of $123.9 million. And that's even been revised by LRC to even be higher because of the vagaries in what constitutes design for human consumption. And so we don't know exactly what's going to happen if this passes. We just know that we're going to lose a lot of revenue. And this is the sales tax is the largest driver of revenue for the state, and the tax on food is a large component of that. When I was out in Pierre 2 years ago and we were dealing with the food tax and the sales tax debate on how are we going to approach this thing, I supported what passed, which was reducing their state sales tax generally from 4.5% to 4.2%. I thought that was a fiscally responsible way of lowering taxes because we had at that point a little extra money coming in that we didn't need to fund our ongoing revenues. But it didn't add the volatility that would be added if you just take out all the food tax on food, because the food tax is one of the most stable portions of our sales tax. South Dakota, we have a very, very broad base tax. That's how we do things. We don't have an income tax. We rely a lot on our sales tax. And if you take out a core portion of that, it's going to add volatility in every year and make budgeting every year harder. And so we don't have a way to replace that. So it's either going to take increasing taxes somewhere else or finding a way to cut over $100 million minimum out of the budget. And that is going to be hard to find. It is absolutely going to have to come out of what we call the big three. That's education, that's Medicaid, so it's like nursing homes, and the state employees. I mean, those are the big three drivers of our state budget, and they're going to have to be affected if that passes. So I would ask you to oppose item 28.
This one to me is a little bit perplexing because I can see two sides to the issue on this. And so eventually I have to make up my mind. But for every $100, if it's say 4%, it would be like $4 out of every 100. That's probably more of an affordable tax than what could replace it. But as far as there being looking for another tax to put on people, I think Pierre could do a better job of budgeting. There's money going out to different groups and stuff like that, and you read the paper and you just groan at what this money is being spent for, instead of directly with the people themselves that have needs. We have needs here. The people should come before any, say, special interest or anything like that, or large companies. When I had a refinishing business, I didn't have government money to help me. Why should some of these big groups get big government money to be able to do that? There's where we can save money and not have to tax the people. Thank you.
Okay, further comments?
Bill Davis from Huron. Amendment F, the work requirements for Medicaid. What's your opinion on that?
Jim, you want to start?
Sure. Medicare, Medicaid, sometimes it seems like it's a fight in Pierre to hang on to the things that we need. The people of South Dakota are not rich. Most of us struggle. Some of us have 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, just to meet needs. And when you cut Medicare, Medicaid, and put restrictions on those things, how many people I have talked to lately that says, I had one guy, he came to me, he said, I have to stop my heart medicine because I can't afford it. That just irritates me. We need to protect our people. We do not need to put cuts on Medicare and Medicaid. There's part of where we can spend our money. Thank you.
Thank you. I voted for Amendment F. It's one of the 2 measures on the ballot this year that were placed on the ballot by the legislature. What Amendment F does is seeks some clarification from the voters as to what they meant when they passed the Medicaid expansion it was 2 years ago now. When it was passed, there was a provision in there that says that we can't have any additional requirements on the expansion population we put on the traditional population. Well, the expansion population is people between 18 and 65 years old who are able-bodied. And so the question is, should those people who are able to work be required to have at least be showing work or attempts at getting work? And I think that's a reasonable thing to seek. Now, just to be clear, Amendment F doesn't impose work requirements because to get work requirements, this would have to pass, and the legislature would also have to pass another bill eventually authorizing it, and then that has to be approved by the federal government. Because right now, the Medicaid program is it is controlled by, for most part, whoever's in charge of the White House. And so when Republicans are in charge, states have been able to get waivers to impose work requirements. When Democrats are in charge, they can't. So it's a mix of a lot of different issues, and the real question for the voters this year is, do you want to at least give South Dakota a chance at asking? Do you want to say, yes, maybe there are some times when people should have work requirements in order to get to be on Medicaid? Again, if you're able-bodied, if you're over 18, you're under 65, and is that something we should at least explore? That's what Amendment F does, so I'd ask you to support Amendment F.
Thank you. Further questions?
Morning, Gary Kaufman from Huron. It's a general question regarding education. Senator Wheeler already referenced, the school funding, which is significant. You talked about the taxes. My question is there one or two education-related issues that you see in Pierre? If you're going to be in Pierre next year, and we could talk about alternative instruction, homeschool ed, private ed, or public ed. It's a general education question. What issues do you see out there for education, and what are your opinions on those issues? Thank you.
Jim, you want to start?
Okay, this one basically, for years, for one thing, school teachers many times have to supply supplies to their students out of their own money. Is that true? That's true. I mean, come on now. Don't you think that there should be more funding towards making sure that those kids can get deal, not have to pull it out of their own pockets? We should respect the people of South Dakota, the teachers, because that's our future they're working with. We need to back them. We need to be there for them. And I can't see cutting funds. Personally, my wife, she's actually a teacher at Cornerstones, and they worry about their budget constantly. Can we have enough money to be able to do this? Can we have enough money to do that? And they're constantly worried about that. Cornerstones helps teach immigrants who want to learn English how to be able to learn English and everything. These programs, people want to learn, and her students want to learn, but they're constantly worried about these things. We need to be aware of them and listen to those needs, take them to peer, and see if there's something we can do about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been a strong advocate for public education my entire time out in Pierre. To me, it's a constitutional requirement we have in our state constitution that we have a good system of education for our children, because it's important for our society to have well-educated children. And for the last 2 times that it's met the Teacher Compensation Review Board, something we put in place back when we did the half-penny increase for teacher pay, which is a board that was designed just to look every few years at where we're at on teacher pay. Because we were at, for the longest time, we were at 51st in the nation on teacher pay. And then we passed that half-penny sales tax a while ago and got education up. I think we got all the way to 47. That's where we kind of topped out. And we were going back down. And that board has reviews that information every few years to kind of see where we're at. And unfortunately, it's been difficult to maintain teacher salaries in the state and remain competitive. When we compete against Minnesota and we compete against Nebraska and Iowa, it absolutely is a major competition to get teachers to stay here. Back many years ago, you put out an open position for an elementary school teacher and you get 20, 30 applicants. Now you're lucky if you get more than a few. And it's harder and harder to find teachers to apply, especially you want like high school science teachers. Those are hard to find. You want special ed teachers? Good luck at this point. I mean, it is hard to fill those positions. And so we have got to maintain consistent and high-level fundings for education. That is a battle that occurs every year out in Pierre to ensure that we have enough money in public education. Just briefly, a little more to the point, vouchers is going to be a bill that's coming, I'm sure, next session. We're going to be dealing with a question of private school funding, voucher programs. Generally, I've not been in favor of those programs. We currently have what's called the Partners in Education Tax Credit, which does allow funding of private school scholarships, and I think that's been an appropriate way of handling that issue, and that's been a good benefit for James Valley Christian here and for Holy Trinity. But I think that program is working well, and I don't think we should move to a larger voucher program. Instead, we need to focus on making sure our teachers and our public schools are funded appropriately.
Thank you, David. Have another question?
Bob Eichhoff, Huron. This summer, we've heard at least 3 situations where state employees have embezzled, bamboozled the state government up to $1.8 million over 13 years. I heard you say something about you're on an audit committee. What do you see as attempts to correct that situation?
Thank you. Oh, that's a great question. It's a source of frustration for myself, too. The Government Operations Audit Committee is a committee that meets, I say, in the off-season. It doesn't meet during the legislative session. It meets outside the legislative session. And it has the ability to go out and get information, investigate, bring in people to testify, and generally have some oversight over government. But it's not an easy committee to actually get stuff accomplished on. I'll just tell you that. It can't do anything. It can't make an agency do anything. All it can do is investigate. We're doing that. We have 2 days scheduled in October on these issues, and I've been a little frustrated in trying to move those investigations along a little faster, trying to get some more information. There's been some hesitancy from the Attorney General's office because there's ongoing criminal cases, and so people don't want to necessarily interfere with those criminal cases by having a legislative investigation. I try to push back on that because I think our legislature can still investigate matters while the criminal case is going on. But those are the kind of things we're working through. We need to get to the bottom of how these things occurred, how they occurred for so long. And I think part of it is we in South Dakota are very trusting people. And so if you have an employee who's been there for many years, close to retirement, people don't necessarily ask them a lot of questions. They kind of let them do what they want a lot. And then you find out that that person was stealing money for 15 years. Well, that's because we need stronger oversight in our administrators, in our management supervisors. That's where a lot of that can be caught. We have invested a lot of money recently in a new accounting system, which we hope will help catch that stuff too. So put in some roadblocks that way, kind of come at it from some different angles. I mean, you're never going to catch everybody. There's always going to be people trying to find a way to work the system, but we have to just find ways to make sure that we have the appropriate controls in place. And we have the Board of Internal Control going to come in to try and talk to us about what are they doing to stop this stuff. It's not an easy investigation. I'm going to keep pushing on it.
Jim, would you like to respond to that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of this business of going years and years of embezzling money and no accountability and nobody checking on these people. If I turned around and did something, I'd have an audit, right? They'd audit little old me. But somebody in a position like that, they don't, there should have been audits. There should be yearly audits on these people. And there should be checks and so on. I mean, think what we could have done with that money that was embezzled. It's gone. That money could have, we're worried about replacement tax on this food thing. That would have helped a long ways along those ways, right? Absolutely. I mean, come on now. We have to be accountable to our people, and we have to be, if somebody's not doing their job and it's been 15 years or whatever, then that means they should have been fired and somebody else that's willing to do the job right should do the job. I mean, come on now. Aren't we frustrated with this? It's been a frustration to all of us. And we need to hold people accountable. We need to audit where we need to. We need the kind of people there that are just willing and running to be able to get in there and find these people who do these things, hold them accountable, and find a way to get that money back if there's a way of getting it back. I don't know. But, you know, there definitely needs to be changes. It hasn't happened in Pierre in the last 4 years or so. Maybe it can happen with some of us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have time for one more question, then we'll move into the closing comments.
Kathy Sobel here. There was a article this morning in today's paper regarding the Amendment G, the confusion about it not getting on the court calendar. And so now there's supposed to be a hearing on December 2nd. No date set for this court trial. It's on the ballot. G is on the ballot. What's gonna happen to those votes now with no trial date set?
Thank you, that's a good question. And that's the reason for the story in the paper. But probably with your knowledge of the way the court system works, and you could maybe shed some light on that.
Yes, I haven't read that article in today's paper. I think the question was whether or not the amendment was properly placed on the ballot, and whether it had sufficient signatures to get on there. It'll be on your ballot. The votes will be cast and they'll be tabulated. Eventually, it will come down to if there was a judicial finding that it was not placed on the ballot, then I believe it would most likely just be overturned at that point and not put into effect. I've kept some eye on those legal arguments, but I'll tell you it's not been my focus, and so I cannot tell you whether it's going to pass or fail in terms of that court case, whether the judge is which way the judge is going to rule. I think the judge has already kind of preliminarily decided on the idea that it's going to stay on the ballot, but there'll be a trial on it. So I think if I was going to guess, which is probably dangerous for me to do, my guess is the judge will still rule that it had the sufficient signatures. It was certified by the Secretary of State with enough signatures. I'm going to guess the judge is most likely to uphold that, and then the decision will actually come down to the voters as to whether it passes or fails.
Thank you, David. And as you said, this is out there in the hands of the court system, and if some mistakes were made or whatever, a decision probably will be made, whether or not it, goes forward in the manner that the people that brought the issue, wish. The easiest answer, of course, would be if the people vote to oppose it, and then that would eliminate it. We thank you. Your questions have been good, and you've been polite. I thank you. The presenters have been pretty much within your time allocation, and an attempt to, the whole purpose of this is an attempt to educate you not only on what goes on inside of the mind of each people, but learn a little bit about the way that our legislative system functions. And so with that, let's see, Jim, you get to make the closing comment first.
Or does he? Do you remember who goes last?
He went first, so you go first on closing arguments. Jim.
Okay, closing arguments. I've got only 2 minutes to cover a lot of reasons why I was asked to run. I had farmers, landowners, and so on begging me to run because Pierre wants to run this a number of people want to run the CO2 pipeline right through Beetle County, Spink County, all the way from Nebraska on up. The CO2 pipeline, most of it is like 2 foot in diameter or bigger, over 2,000 pounds per square inch, and the farmers don't want it. And they've tried to use eminent domain, which has failed, but they will keep coming back at us. And I represent those people that want the landowners and their rights. They have gone through depression, they have gone through financial difficulties, they have gone through the Dust Bowl, generations after generations of holding that land. And now Summit Carbon Pipelines wants to come in, take over their land, and push their way through, and that is not right. That's not who we are. We're South Dakotans. We have a right to own our own land. And counties, townships, all of these things basically, Summit could just plow right through their ordinances. One guy said his pipeline thinks it'll be about 600 feet from his property. And I will be sending out more information and writing about all this, because I don't have 2 minutes to try to explain all of this, and I can't, but I will. Unfortunately, some people in Pierre have taken the side of Summit and is defending and working with Summit. I do not. I will not. And I will stand for the people of South Dakota, the communities and the farmers, and take a big stand on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. David?
Thank you, thank you. I was surprised that there weren't any questions on the pipeline, and came to a closing argument, so we had a first mention of the pipeline, which is just fine. I'm on record in terms of where I voted on 201. I'm happy to talk with anybody who wants about the pipeline and answer questions. I don't have enough time to deal with that in a closing argument. But there are a lot more issues out in Pierre than the pipeline. There are going to be a lot of issues we deal with. We have hundreds of bills out there on many different varied topics every year. And I ask that you vote for me and send me back to Pierre, because I can provide consistent and effective leadership for our district and for our state. Something to be aware of is that based upon turnover that's already occurred, people that have termed out, people that have already lost in primaries, over 1/2 of the entire state Senate is going to be new next year. 1/2 will be new senators, people who were not senators last term. And that means there's going to be a need for people out there with experience. There's going to be a need for people out there who have been there, who've run bills, who've been in leadership, who've been committee chairs. And so having someone in Pierre who has that experience will be a great benefit to our district. And so I ask that you will allow me to help the district further and provide that leadership for our district and our state. People out in Pierre often come to me to help them with their bills. And that's because I know how to write bills, I know how to explain bills, I know how to pass bills. I can do those things well out there, and I can do that for you. I have a track record for working with people who come to me with their issues, come to me with their ideas, and say, David, I had this problem, I had this issue with this law or with this statute that needs to be changed. Can you help? And I've done that every year I've been out there. I've had constituent bills that I've worked on, help people with. And that's the kind of leadership and service that I think a senator should provide. I ask that you help send me back out to Pierre and vote on November 5th for me. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Let's show your appreciation for these gentlemen for getting up in the morning. And with that, let me give just a little bit of editorial comment, and I'm going to invite Lori to come up here and give you a little bit of partly the ballot issues, of which you have the handouts. But As you notice, you know, the yard signs and the media attention, in most instances, is asking for a no vote on this issue or that issue. I was in Sioux Falls yesterday, and the first time that I saw a vote yes on, in a yard sign. So, but you need to kind of understand how some of these things come about. A piece of legislation that is designed to address issues of public policy is done by legislative process, where the bill, as David mentions, the bill is written, and then it is presented to a committee. Public testimony is invited, you know, people are asked to come and say the reasons why this idea is good, why this idea is bad. If the committee agrees that yes, that is good. And remember, these people on the committee are people that you send, the public sends, to react to these issues on your behalf. They're called representatives, legislators, representatives, senators. So if that's a good idea and the other people on the committee agree, then it passes the committee. Then that bill moves over to the main chamber of the floor of either the Senate or the House. And again, people are allowed, now the only debate is from other members of that body. Ask questions of the bill sponsor, you know, try to understand what is good about this, what's bad about it. If it passes that chamber, then it goes over to the other chamber. The third stop along the way, and there it goes through the committee process again. You or I can go to Pierre and say, this is a bad bill. You need to defeat it. Or we can say something else. Then if it passes that committee and passes that chamber, then it has a fifth stop that it has to go to, and that's the governor's office. So there's 5 places for that idea to be rejected. Now, over here on the other side, you're at the state fair and you're accosted by somebody with a petition that says, here, sign this is a good thing. That whole public testimony, public input process is bypassed. And so then it shows up on the ballot. This is a bad way to produce public policy. So with that, Lori, let me turn it over to you, and you can. I know the chamber has made it, gone on record as officially having a position. So.
All right, I'd like to give both Jim and David a round of applause again. So we have a lot of amendments or ballot measures. I know that you all can read because you're very intelligent people, but for the sake of maybe some of our audience, we're just gonna review each of those ballot measures. We're not gonna debate them. We're not gonna have public testimony, pro and cons for them. We're just going to read them so that you understand. And then at the back, I would encourage you, there is several of these, and you may have them already, but take more with you if you want to share them with your neighbors or friends or whatever. Really, the intent of our Government Affairs Committee is just that you are all informed as well, and that we have informed voters, because that's the important thing, is that we get more people involved and that people are informed and are willing to speak their minds, I guess, and let our legislators know what we want in our area. So with that, having 7 measures on the ballot this year, we'll just talk about each one just briefly with the Attorney General's explanation. So the first one, starting with Constitutional Amendment E, which is an amendment to the South Dakota Constitution updating gender references for certain office holders and persons. According to the Attorney General, the South Dakota Constitution became effective upon the state joining the United States in 1889, and the general male pronoun he, his, and him are used in the text of the state constitution, certain office holders or individuals. So this amendment would just remove the use of generic male pronouns when referencing certain office holders or individuals. So a vote yes is to adopt the amendment, and a vote no is to leave the amendment as is. That one's probably the easiest one of explanations of all of them. Constitutional Amendment F is the amendment of the South Dakota Constitution authorizing the state to impose a work requirement on individuals eligible for expanded Medicaid benefits. The Medicaid program is funded by the state and the federal government to provide medical coverage for certain low-income people who qualify for the program. In 2022, the voters approved a constitutional provision that expanded Medicaid eligibility for any person over age 18 and under 65 whose income is at or below 133% of the federal poverty level, plus 5% of the federal poverty level for the applicable family size. This constitutional amendment authorizes the state to impose work requirements on any person eligible to receive benefits under expanded Medicaid program, except for those persons who are physically or mentally disabled. The amendment does not identify any specific work requirements that may be imposed on those receiving expanded Medicaid benefits. Any work requirement proposed by the state must be approved by the federal government in order to implement it. So a vote yes is to adopt that amendment, and a vote no is to leave it as it is. Amendment G, an initiated amendment establishing a right to abortion in the state constitution. The Attorney General's explanation is this initiated amendment establishes a constitutional right to an abortion and provides a legal framework for the regulation of abortion. This framework would override existing laws and regulations concerning abortion. The amendment establishes that during the first trimester of a pregnant woman's decision to obtain an abortion may not be regulated, nor may regulations be imposed on the carrying out of an abortion. In the second trimester, the amendment allows the regulation of a pregnant woman's abortion decision and the regulation of carrying out an abortion. Any regulation of a pregnant woman's abortion decision or of an abortion during the second trimester must be reasonably related to the physical health of the pregnant woman. In the third trimester, the amendment allows the regulation or prohibition of abortion, except in those cases where the abortion is necessary to preserve the life or health of the pregnant woman. Whether an abortion is necessary during the third trimester must be determined by the pregnant woman's physician according to the physician's medical judgment. Judicial clarification of the amendment may be necessary. The legislature cannot alter the provisions of a constitutional amendment. So in this, a vote yes is to adopt Amendment G, and a vote no is to leave the Constitution as it is. Constitutional Amendment H, an amendment to the South Dakota Constitution establishing top 2 primary elections. Currently, to appear on the general election ballot, majority party candidates for the following offices must participate in a partisan primary election: governor, state legislature, U.S. Senate and House of Representatives, elected county offices. Only members of the candidate's party may vote for the candidate unless that party has opened the primary to voters not affiliated with the party. Minor party candidates may be chosen by primary or party convention. Unaffiliated candidates, independents, are only required to file nominating petitions to appear on the general election ballot. For the listed offices, this amendment requires one primary election where all candidates run against each other in their respective races, including major and minor party and unaffiliated candidates. A candidate may list any party next to their name on the ballot, regardless of party affiliation or registration. All voters may vote for any candidate. The two candidates receiving the most votes advance to the general election. If there is more than one candidate to be elected to an office, the number of candidates advancing to the general election is twice the number to be elected. Primary elections may be held for other offices. The amendment may be challenged on constitutional grounds. And then there's a fiscal note. Open primaries would require printing additional ballots at a cost of 47 cents per ballot. The additional cost statewide to counties would currently be approximately $23,667 for each county for each primary election. The share of the total cost for each county will vary. There is no expected cost to the state government. A vote yes adopts Amendment H. A vote no leaves the Constitution as it is. And then we have initiated Measure 28. And to start off with this one, I will read what it entails. And then I will let you know that our Huron Chamber Board of Directors, with the recommendation from our Governmental Affairs, has voted to oppose initiated Measure 28 because of the way it's written and because it is not helpful to our local municipalities and how we would be collecting our funds. Even though it says in here when we read it that the municipalities could collect the tax, because it would not be allowed at the state level, the counties and the cities would not be able to collect that. And that could be detrimental to the running of all of our municipalities and what that could do for how we run the city. What would that happen to our police force, our fire, our parks and rec, where we use that money to help run our city. So it's not a well-written bill according to how our government affairs read it and the chamber board voted on it. But I will read it. So I know I probably should have said all of that afterwards, but it's taking, we put it out in the paper. You would have saw that already. It was on the radio that we did vote to oppose this initiated measure. So an initiated measure prohibiting taxes on anything sold for human consumption. Currently, the state collects tax on the sale or use of certain goods, including foods and drinks. Many municipalities also collect these taxes. This initiated measure prohibits the state from collecting sales or use tax on anything sold for human consumption. The measure eliminates these sources of revenue for the state. Human consumption is not defined by state law. However, its common definition includes more than food and drinks. The measure does not prohibit the collection of sales or use tax on alcoholic beverages or prepared food. Prepared food is defined by law to include food that is sold, heated, or with utensils. The measure may affect the state's obligation under the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement and the Streamlined Sales Tax Agreement. The Master Settlement Agreement resulted from multi-state lawsuits against cigarette manufacturers for the public health effects of smoking. South Dakota's annual share of the Master Settlement Agreement is approximately $20 million. The Streamlined Sales Tax Agreement is a multi-state program designed to simplify the collection of sales tax and use tax for companies selling in multiple jurisdictions. Judicial or legislative clarification of the measure will be necessary. And then there's the fiscal note. Beginning July 1st, 2025, the state could see a reduction in sales tax of $123.9 million annually from no longer taxing the sale of anything sold for human consumption except alcoholic beverages and prepared food. Municipalities could continue to tax anything sold for human consumption. Vote yes to adopt the initiated measure. Vote no to leave South Dakota law as it is. And then we have two more. Initiated Measure 29, and this wasn't brought up. There's several of these I thought we'd have questions on, but we just don't have enough time sometimes here. An initiated measure legalizing the recreational use, possession, and distribution of marijuana. This initiated measure allows individuals 21 years of age or older to possess, grow, ingest, and distribute marijuana or marijuana paraphernalia. Individuals may possess up to 2 ounces of marijuana in a form other than marijuana concentrate or other marijuana products. Individuals may possess up to 6 marijuana plants with no more than 12 plants per household. The measure also places limits on the possession of other forms of marijuana or marijuana products. Under the measure, the possession, ingestion, and distribution of marijuana and marijuana paraphernalia remains illegal for individuals under the age of 21. Driving under the influence of marijuana remains illegal. The measure restricts where individuals may possess or consume marijuana, such as schools or where tobacco is prohibited. The measure allows employers to restrict any employee's use of marijuana. Property owners may also regulate the use of marijuana on their property. The measure does not affect state laws dealing with hemp. It also does not change laws according to the state's medical marijuana program. The measure legalizes marijuana-derived substances considered felony-controlled substances under state law. Marijuana remains illegal under federal law. Judicial or legislative clarification of this measure may be necessary. And then the fiscal note, the state and municipalities would collect minimal additional sales tax revenue, as the measure would not decriminalize the sale of cannabis, but would decriminalize the sale of cannabis accessories. Counties could see incarceration expenses reduced by $581,556 every year. Vote yes to adopt the initiated measure and no to leave South Dakota law as it is. And then referred Law 21, which is the one that there will be lots of discussion on and probably within our legislative candidates, but a referred act to provide new statutory requirements for regulating linear transmission facilities, to allow counties to impose a surcharge on certain pipeline companies, and to establish a landowner bill of rights. The Attorney General explanation is the act authorizes counties to impose for any tax year in which the pipeline operators receive a tax credit $1 per foot surcharge on carbon dioxide pipelines. Revenue from the surcharge must be distributed as tax relief to each property owner in the county where the pipeline is installed. Any remaining revenue can be allocated at each county's discretion. No other fee may be imposed except property taxes or fees associated with road agreements. The act also imposes certain requirements on carbon dioxide pipelines. Pipelines must be installed to a minimum depth. Each pipeline operator is responsible for damages to drain tile and to the surface owner caused by the pipeline. Each operator is also responsible for leaks or failures of the pipeline, and any land agent acting on behalf of the pipeline must be a pipeline employee, state resident, or state licensed real estate agent. The act also includes requirements that carbon pipeline easements be in writing and only enforceable for a specific period of time. Pipeline operators must initiate business operations within 5 years of the easement, and each easement is void after 5 years of non-use. A vote yes to allow the act of